So my name is Cesar Pentic from the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology, and also the Director of the African Studies Program at the University of Calgary. It is my great pleasure of Calgary. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Cross-Cultural Development Workshop as part of the Hima Origins in Action Conference. So before we get started, I would like to thank and acknowledge all the attendees, speakers, and support team who have worked hard to put this conference together. Putting a conference together these days is not easy, especially if you're doing it on virtual. It's a new ball game. So at this stage, it is my pleasure to introduce the panel for today's discussion. I'll begin with myself. As I said, I'm from the University of Calgary here at the Department of Anthropology with a background in archaeology, but I teach courses in African Studies and Development Studies. The second speaker is Dr. Pastor Busuzi. And Busuzi is the Director of Humanities Research Center and is senior in the Department of Anthropology and Heritage Studies at the University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. He's also a country representative to the Committee of the East African Quaternary Research Association and the Association of Southern Africa Paleontologists and Archaeologists, ASAPA. Second on the list is Dr. Purity Kiora. Kiora is a senior research scientist and director regional museum sites and monuments of the University of the National Museum of Kenya. Dr. Kiora is also involved with the conservation and awareness effort of Kenya prehistoric sites for economic investment in Kenya. And lastly, is His Excellency, Dr. Impuki, High Commissioner, Tanzania High Commissioner to Canada here. He is a medical doctor by training and one of the first Tanzania to enter into this area of anesthesia. And he has served at the presidency on a number of rules, and also is the president of the Society of Anesthesiologists of Tanzania, and organized the first two SATA national anesthesia conferences in 2014 and 2015. So briefly, that is what we have now. So we are supposed, the first presentation starts at 1:10 to 10:25, which is 15 minutes. So I'll be able to, do this within a very short time. So we still have few minutes to begin my session. So I also want to say that as we go along, if there are problems, we have somebody who assists us, and I'm not sure, Fegu, do you have, do anybody have a PowerPoint to share? I think he's gone.
Yes.
Yes. You guys will have PowerPoints you're going to be sharing?
Yes.
Okay, the share function should be enabled, so you should be allowed to share them as it's your turn.
Yeah, so just make sure that I enable that.
Yep.
And I also
it's enabled.
Yeah, and I also make provision for the transition. And I just want to urge presenter to stay within the time limit, because these things were planned.
Definitely.
Yes,
definitely.
That is the only
Okay,
thing.
well, I'll let you get to it then.
Yeah, so there's no problem starting early. So I think we still have about 6 minutes, and because of the transition, I think is when we, I don't know whether, Fego, what do you think? Should I wait till the 1:10 to start. I start at 1:10. My presentation starts at 1:10. Here goes. It's gone. Okay. Let me set the clock.
Um,
I'm going to
oh,
start.
Apentic, yeah, now it's your turn in the schedule to start speaking, right?
Yeah, we still have some few minutes, so but it's fine. So I'm going to start. I'm setting the clock for myself to make sure that we have 5 minutes to play around. That's
Okay, sounds good.
So that is what I wanted to make sure that we have some few minutes, because the transition from speaker to speaker is not going to be just straightforward. So when we have
Yes, I understand.
play around, it's fine. So I'll begin with my presentation. The title of my presentation is Transdisciplinarity and Citizen Science in Archaeological Research, a Colonial Gaze. And I'll begin by saying that several scholars have in recent times made strong arguments for the agency to extend disciplinary boundaries of archaeology and open up archaeological research and practice to a wider range of participants in communities being researched. Advocates of this emerging position consider this move not only as the most ethical approach to archaeological knowledge production, but also it should be the norm. Advocates of this position also believe a move away from the status quo that often arrogate archaeological knowledge production to Western trained investigators or scientists, while denying participants of local communities has, in a way, not been helpful. So what this paper intends to do is that it wants to examine the future of archaeological research practice within the context of transdisciplinary, participatory, and transdisciplinary and participatory research and knowledge production. So this is more or less a concept paper. So what I want to do with this paper is to argue why there is the need for us to extend archaeological boundaries in terms of research and practice. The goal of the presentation is to contribute to the current discourses and debates on the need to search for alternative visions and paths to archaeological research and practice, including alternative practice in which several fields that are currently considered distinct, including community-based collaborative archaeology, indigenous archaeology, applied archaeology, could become the norm or standard rather than the exception. This position also is to help us remove the walls between archaeology and other disciplines. And that is why, and this fit within the theme of this conference, which is multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and interdisciplinary research, which allow us to draw from different disciplines and from different aspects. The aim of the presentation is also to challenge the hegemonic practice of knowledge production about the past and to open the doors for multi ways of knowledge production and knowing. And this will require not just transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, but incorporated into this dynamic, the issue of transparency and openness to archaeological research and practice. It is also to open archaeological research and practice to a wider range of participants, particularly research communities. The long-held view is that knowledge about the past, or archaeological knowledge, seems to be within the scope of scientists trained in Western universities. And just to mention that, and that idea of archaeology just within the prelude of scientists has been part of the colonial bedsom on the development of archaeology. So we want to ensure that, in fact, to ensure that we open up this space means archaeological practice do not have to privilege one investigator over the other, or even the scientists over those of the community. So what I intend to do is to advocate for the most ethical approach to archaeological practice and research in a more pan-disciplinary research. So the aim is to contribute to the emerging debates that advocate for collaborative and community participatory archaeological practice and research. So to put this in context, African archaeology, as I mentioned, has this tone and this history, and that is the burdensome nature of the colonial experience. Some of us are even aware that even archaeology was used as a tool during the apartheid by the advocates of the apartheid regime, even to the extent that they were making claims that the Europeans, when they arrived, certain type of group of people were not even in South Africa. And I remember one of the arguments was the arrival of the whites in 1650s in the Transkei area. When they arrived there were no people, which is never true. The case of Zimbabwe and the rest were also contested as being African. So whilst African archaeology has come a long way, in which the work of Likis at Odevoire marks a turning point in African history, and despite its impressive work being done in the past and currently going on, African history is still, African archaeology is still only vastly underdeveloped. Nevertheless, it still has this colonial hangover. So the hope is that African government, international organizations, research will provide more archaeological research grounded in the idea that archaeological communities are part of that research and are part of the scientists in creating that knowledge. And that is one of the most important things that we need to recognize recently in current archaeological practice. To move on, archaeological and cultural heritage and the global economic disparity. Whilst traditional archaeologists have always involved in understanding the past, which is good, and providing people information about societies, there's also the tendency to marginalize the communities themselves. And also to the extent that even archaeologists tend to do research in communities surrounded by poverty, but they seem to close their eyes to that poverty. After all, they are there to discover something about the past and to generate knowledge about the past, and even appear to suggest that the people might not even have that knowledge themselves. But from Africa myself, people have always cherished their culture, they have always preserved the past and other things that are very important to them. They may not call it archaeology, but they certainly call it whatever you want, but it's common to see a colleague of mine often said, memory centers, either in shrines or certain landmarks that talks about the history and the archaeology of those societies. So when we begin to move from the traditional approach to incorporate the idea of community, action archaeology, applied archaeology, in which people are at the center, then it contributes not only to a sense of pride and achievement of these people, but also to the economic development and aspiration of the continent. Archaeologists and their work must also aim at providing policymakers of models of development. For instance, tourism, archaeologists will have a role to play there. Revival of traditional crafts, and so forth. Use of archaeological know-how can also help to locate water resources, and some researches have been done in this area. Discover sustainable models of subsistence and workable model of social organization. So these are areas that archaeology is already making progress and making a good contribution to society. And I will come back to some of this, and some archaeologists have gone out of the way to actually incorporate what I will propose in the end, participatory-based archaeology into their research. So what do I want to establish? What I want to propose as, which is something that many people are already doing, is a collaborative approach to archaeological research that ensure equitably involvement of all partners and the research process, and also recognize the unique strength each brings to the process. And this means scientists, local communities working together in a genuine partnership. Partnership between research and community with the ultimate goal of inducing social change. And what I mean social change is positive change. There's no need doing archaeology, digging in a community, producing materials. These materials are hanging out somewhere in a library in Europe or in a researcher's office in Africa. It has no relevance to the people, or the people have no access, and the people cannot use that information to improve their lives. So what I'm saying here is that researchers are more effective when they receive feedback and involvement from community. After all, research in most cases is towards improving the human condition. So in this kind of proposed community base, community members are not the subject, not just people that you go to study or use their backyard to dig and get information, but also they should be involved from the design, analysis, and conclusion of the project, and they should be part of the owners of the knowledge that you produce. In other words, what I'm saying here is that there is a need to flip the public outreach element of archaeological designs and imbibe open participation from the onset by nurturing relationship of mutual respect and trust. And I emphasize mutual respect and trust, and to take advantage of and improve the portability of archaeological science, that it can be done in and by local people. And that is something that we need to recognize. Let me see my time. Okay, I still have a few minutes. So in conclusion, what I'm saying here is that archaeology has played a major role in African development and continue to have huge relevance to contemporary African development. And that is, if you want to continue moving forward, we need to move beyond the traditional trust of typologies, classification, chronology, historical reconstruction of period, ethnic identity, and cultures are the ultimate goal to consent of African development. Development issues such as malnutrition, famine, epidemics, wars, civil wars, and so forth, and crippling disorganization are not entirely new. And these are areas that archaeology can still contribute. And as a discipline, it is to serve as the intermediary between the past and the present, and the medium for ancestral voice and wisdom. And this means that the community will have to involve. So we conclude by saying that there are a number of excellent archaeological projects going on. The work of Andros Slocus, Nagy, the work of Nick David and Noel and Starr, and the Urban Origins East African project are all good examples that have incorporated development elements into their work. So I am almost time, 1 minute more. So I'll pass on to our next presenter. Thank you. So I'll hand on to Busuzi, Dr. Busuzi. Hello, Dr. Busuzi. Yes. Dr. Busuzi. Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's now your turn. Yeah. So I hand over to you now. So, but you are still yeah. So it's now your turn.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have something to share? You can share.
Okay, I want to share with you my PowerPoint presentation. How can I?
Professor Bushosi, if you
Yes.
look in the lower left, you should see a button that says Start Video.
I am looking where?
In the lower left, right next to the microphone.
Yes.
If you press that, that can start the web camera if you would like to show yourself. If you would like to share the screen, there should be a green button that says Share Screen. And you can click that and pick the window that you would like to share.
Okay. Yeah, ready to share.
Okay. Stop.
I'm going.
Research.
And then if you open your presentation, we can now see what you are looking at on your computer. For all the viewers, please have a little bit of patience while we're figuring this out. So, Professor, do you have your presentation anywhere?
I see that.
You, Professor Bushosi, you are muted once again. You have to unmute.
Okay.
I think it might be the PowerPoint in the bottom potentially.
See there.
Where is the PowerPoint now?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
Just click that and there
Okay.
you are.
And then you can
Okay, thank you all. So actually my presentation will be about the challenge facing African paleontologists, scientists at their research end over. So I will be looking on the general on the Africa perspective, what paleoscientists they are supposed to do so that they can go with the science. So actually, you can see the map up there. I'm trying to show the major site, paleoanthropological sites, especially in East Africa, South Africa, and some part of Central Africa. But also I'm talking about Africa because Africa is more populated. We have like more than 1.3 billion people. And we all understand that Africa is actually the mining center when you come to the issue of paleontological and paleoanthropological research. So that is a destination for most of the scientists. But in fact, Africans have been left behind when it comes to the research mobilization, especially in the area of paleontology and area of paleoanthropology. Until now, there are few Africans who are doing paleo science. And most of the Africans that time, either they are doing heritage management, in archaeology, or historical archaeology. But the issue of paleoanthropology, paleontology, and any paleo science, they have been left for foreigners, especially people from Europe and Northern America coming to Africa and to do. So what are the key factors which have been causing Africa to be left behind? I think there are multiple factors, but I'm gonna go through that. What I think that we have a very big problem when it comes to the issue of mentorship. We don't have enough funds to do that. And actually, the most leading actually challenge is the laboratory to undertake our studies. And actually, when it comes to the issue of library and whatever, also there also a big problem. So when you put those all things together, I think it comes to be true that working condition in Africa, in most of the science discipline, it's not conducive. So what are the major challenges facing the young African research? Actually, we have a big problem when it comes to the issue of mentorship. This is a big issue because in most of African universities, people get to be associate professor or professors at the age of 50, and at the age of 60, most of them, they are going to retire. So they have like less than 10 years to mentor the younger scientists, which I think that this is not enough time for mentorship. And when you go to the rest of the world, professors, they are working up to 70, 65 years, but that is quite different in Africa. So there is no actually succession plan between the younger scientists and the senior scientists. Also, we have underdeveloped network between younger African scholars and those. The working environment is not good enough. We have actually our library, also they are not good enough. We have not modern laboratory and modern equipment. Those younger African researchers, they have excessive teaching load. So, and when you put all of this, I think there is an appropriate management system when it comes to the issue of research and knowledge development. So what are the major setbacks? Why Africa are there? I think that's the global policy. When you come back at 1980s, 1990s, actually that was like the condition from the World Bank when it conditioned most of African government to spend much on basic education, especially in primary and school and secondary school, rather than higher education. So, and then and the idea was that because of basic education, it have a better return on investment when you compared it to those high education. But that was quite different in the other geographical area when you compare to Africa. So the issue, actually, the long-term effect in that most of those adoption, actually it turned out African universities, and now most of the African universities, they are like teaching institution and they are not anymore a research institution. So, and among the long term, we can see a disequilibrium between academic staff when you come to the ranking, and in most of African universities, you can see those senior scholars, they are very few, and most of the population within academic environment, it's the younger scholar, and we don't have enough manpower to mentor them. I'm taking the University of Dar es Salaam, where I'm working as an example, and this is based on a census of 2016-2017. When you look on the full professor, they are also almost 4% of the academic population. Associate professors just 60%, and when you come to senior lecturers, just 12%. So, but when you come to lecturer, it's like the quarter of the population, like 23%. Assistant lecturer, almost it's half, 41%, and tutorial assistant 40%. So how can 10%, which is the number of associate and full professors, can actually mentor 90% of the academic population at the university? So that is a big challenge, and that's what I'm talking about. There is equilibrium when it comes to the academic environment and the research undertaking. So, and when you talk on that, actually, when you survey the entire Africa, probably can take out South Africa and Egypt, because the paleoanthropology and the paleontology in South Africa is more developed when you compare to others. So when you come to Tanzania, even archaeology itself, which is the younger discipline, was introduced in 1985. But since its introduction, there are few Tanzanians which have been trained in the area of paleoanthropology and paleontology. Actually, throughout the country, we are less than 10 people. We are 10 professors and doctors specializing on that area. So, and you can see Tanzania is one of the countries where paleoanthropology and paleontology science, we have those big sites like Olduvai, like Tori, Tendanguru, and just to mention a few, but you can see the number. But when you look on the foreigners who are coming to work in Tanzania, it is 100 of people, they are coming, and 100 of students, foreigner students, they are coming to do their research in Tanzania. And very little have been done to develop the younger scientists from those mother countries, or to develop those research working work like laboratory in Africa, so that they are like mining, taking actually the artifact and fauna abroad, and then analyzing them and then bringing them back. So those African professors, now they are like a logistic person, and I don't feel that this is a proper way to do science. They have to contribute and they have to do a real science rather than doing like logistic works. So, and what is the long-term actual impact on that? So it's the lack of succession plan. So, and because of limited number of senior scholars and modernity to prepare young African, you can see even the mentorship program is not good enough. So, and when you look at those few researchers who are doing paleoanthropology and paleontology, they are too busy and they don't have time even to mentor the younger one. So I am using one example from a scholar from Nigeria. I am quoting him. He say, when I first wanted to publish, I wanted someone to assist me in my dissertation report into a publication. I approached 2 professors and they kept postponing, and until when I give up. So he was not able to publish, and so his appointment. So what the implication is that even though this senior scholar, it seems that they are not ready to assist younger scholars to take their position. So, and another area which I think is actually bringing a lot of challenges, it's like the funding. African governments, they are facing a lot of challenges, like the issue of health, the issue of primary education, the issue of poverty and whatever. So when you are going to the research, in particular in those archaeological, paleontological, paleoanthropology, so they are not actually spending much on that area. So researchers, they don't have money or funds to do the research. So when they are trying to look on those funding opportunities from abroad, you find even those funders, they have their own idea. So you have to bear with them. So at the end, now is what you are claiming, that we are not helping the local community and whatever. But the idea is that you have to bear the condition from the funders. So, and also, when you are looking on those grants, there is no room for younger scientists. So those funders, they are looking on experienced researchers, and so they are demanding a lot of working experience, publication, and whatever. So at that end, you don't have room for younger scientists to do their research. So at the end of the day, it means that we are killing our talent. And Africa in 2030, I don't think that there will be good enough number of scientists working in Africa. And remember that even the few younger African which we are sending abroad to do their PhD, their masters, because of bad working condition at home, they are not coming back. So I am very worried about the future of paleoanthropology, paleontology, and paleoscience, actually, when it comes to Africa. So what should we do? I think there is a need to improve the working environment, especially and actually when it comes to science. We have to make sure that funders, researchers coming in Africa, and few African researchers, you have to invest much on the laboratory and equipment. And actually, we have to make sure that our younger scholars, we are actually assisting them from those high teaching load, heavy teaching load, so that they can have time to do science. And actually, we have to invest much on infrastructure, which come to, we need well-established research institution in Africa with a very modern library, very modern infrastructure, and very modern laboratories. And also, we have to look on the way, how can we help those younger scholars in Africa actually to get promoted to the high rank. The only way is not, I'm not campaigning that we should just uplift them. They need a room, they need to be assisted so that they can publish and get promoted to senior level. Otherwise, we are killing ourselves and we are making a challenge which can kill Africa talent at the end. So, and now the reading question is why it has been always rigid for younger Africans to become effective scientists. So that is based on the problem which I have been addressing on this my presentation. So we have to look how can we solve the problem of funding? How can we assist our younger scholars to become like reading scientists, to become like the future senior lecturer, professors, and the assistant professors? How can those seniors try to assist those by reviewing their paper and just preparing them to become a competitor, other than blocking them, creating a barrier for them, because we have a chance to make a decision over them. So that's the kind of the mentorship which I think it's lacking now among the senior and junior scholars. And that is not actually limited to African seniors. This is it's a global issue. The academic scientific, actually even the publication ground, when it's younger and it's coming from Africa, they don't have long to present their idea. They don't have long, but rather than mentoring them to assist them to improve their papers, their scientific way, we are just like thrashing them away. So is that the proper way to help our younger scholars? So I don't think that on that end over we will be helping science in Africa. So what is the future of paleoscience in Africa? So we have to think that, I think that it's the only way is to make sure that we are removing those paleoscience from few senior scholars, and we are assisting young African scholars to become a future leading researcher in Africa and outside Africa. We need to help them gain confidence. We need to help them get support from inside Africa and outside Africa. We need them to develop a network inside and outside Africa, which we are talking about multidisciplinary. We need to restore the issue of paleoscience at every angle. So,
Dr. Buzi, you may want to
also, okay, so I am just making a summary. So on that end, I can say that professors in Africa, they have to think on the way how they can help younger scientists. And so in my conclusion, because of the time, I think that's my concluding remark. So there is a need for consistent mentorship and training and well assisting young scientists. So experiencing researchers should mentor young scientists. So the experiencing researchers should start to engage young scientists at any levels, from the development of proposal and in the field and the laboratory work. So, and the younger scholars should be supported from developing proposal, from doing research, from writing and actual submission, and helping them to get publishing their work, their research work. So in general, in Africa, we need to find a better means of make policymaker to understand the link between research and development. Thank you for listening and for your time.
Thank you very much. So we will quickly move to Dr. Kera, and I want to remind presenters, please let us stay within the time limit so that we will be able to cover everybody. So thank you again. So Dr. Kera, over to you.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, good evening, good night from wherever you are. And I just want to begin by appreciating and thanking the organizers of this conference for inviting me to come and share and learn. And I'll try and share my screen. Hopefully I'll get it right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Really?
No.
Bushosi, could you please stop sharing so Kira can proceed?
Bishop Zuzi should stop his. I don't know how you do
Can you
this.
see it now?
No.
You still can't see it because
Okay,
I've
I can
already
see.
shared. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Right
Because I've
now?
shared.
Right now?
The Bushara should
Is
exit.
someone else? Okay. Let me try now. You can see now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
All right. The previous two speakers have actually talked a lot about what I was going to talk about, but all the same, I'll go ahead and give my presentation. We all know that science is basic knowledge, a source of information and foundation of systems. And science generates solutions for everyday life and helps us to answer the great mysteries of the universe. It has a specific role as well as a variety of functions for the benefit of our society, which is to create knowledge, improve education, and increase the quality of our lives. But science must also respond to societal needs and global challenges. Public understanding and engagement with science and citizen participation, including through the popularization of science, are essential to equip citizens to make informed personal and professional choices. And governments, on the other hand, need to make decisions based on quality scientific information on issues that matter to their populations. And policymakers also need to legislate on societal issues which require the latest scientific knowledge. And a lot has already been spoken about this. And I'll just put a perspective from the Kenyan paleosciences. Paleoscience is defined as a comparative social science. It is a field which relies on other areas of study such as geology, archaeology, palynology, and many others. Simply put, paleoscience is a search for knowledge about our biological, technological origins and evolution. Now I'm trying, okay, good. This science is believed to have begun, I'm talking about in Africa. It's believed to have begun in the 19th century when the idea of biological evolution of species in general was legitimized by Charles Darwin when he published the book on the origins of species in 1859. Through his works, Darwin in 1871 also identified Africa as the continent on which the human evolution story had begun. Even though paleoscience is considered a science, over the years, it had to play catch up. And we've heard a lot about this from the previous speakers. For example, if you look at the last 15 years, the focus on science has been more on diseases, including such areas as HIV, cancer, and now today we are looking at COVID-19. Other areas of focus have included climate change, technological innovation, among other areas. And these have had quite a massive research effort and focus. To face sustainable development challenges, governments and citizens alike must understand the language of science and must become scientifically literate. Thus, paleoscience should also focus on addressing societal needs by using the studies on past human existence on the landscape, and they should also endeavor to nurture societal quest for a better and equitable existence. So, how has the paleoscience interacted with the society and culture in Kenya through time? I'll try to answer this question by just giving you a synopsis of my life journey in the field of archaeology. Growing up, I had an obsession of being a teacher. I admired teachers since they commanded a lot of power and respect in the community. I, however, changed this interest during high school when I met and interacted with students from different walks of life. I was meant to understand that there were other fields of career such as judges, doctors, engineers, pilots, you name them, there were so many of them. I therefore decided to pursue a career which I could command societal accolade. This dream I carried to university, but my grades only afforded me a place in the Department of Geology and not in engineering or in medicine as I had anticipated. And as I completed my undergraduate in geology, I wondered how I could have a societal effect. I thought I could go out and practice science by looking at geological processes and their effects on the environment. And it wasn't long before actually I discovered that this was far-fetched. Most of the geology firms in Kenya were mining companies and they were heavily male-oriented. I therefore continued with my search for a job, and finally I landed at the National Museums of Kenya. I remember receiving a call requesting me to report at the Department of Paleontology, and I was very excited because I knew at least I had learned a little bit of paleontology during my geology in the last 4 years. But shock on me, when I went to the National Museums of Kenya, I was actually told to join the archaeology department. I was disappointed, obviously, because that's not what I wanted. And again, I didn't have much knowledge on archaeology. I only had the little knowledge in paleontology that I had at least learned in university. And at this point, I started the painstakingly journey of digging dirt in search of stone tools. I must say that from my early experience with the picks and with the trowels and all the other equipments that you use in archaeology, I realized that this field was a very lonely life, and it was also surrounded only by archaeologists or students or the support staff who are helping us in the field. And this was around the early 2000s, and any contact with the society then was with curious locals, mainly grazing their animals or searching for water or firewood. And they did not have much views of what we were doing in the field. They just thought we were digging holes and they could not understand what we were looking for. Some of them probably thought we were looking for the precious minerals. Others just thought we were a bunch of maybe possessed humans who had a lot of time to waste being in the field. And most of the time we just drove in and out of the field without even interacting with anyone. And as we dug through layers and layers of dirt, we learned that the history of African archaeology had started even before the colonial period. And this was mainly when some of the European explorers came to Africa and they were traversing Africa, and some of them collected rocks and they became geologists. And then the field was taken up by European researchers, and most of them actually had learned from universities in their respective countries. So the knowledge that they had and the understanding of the field of archaeology that they had was from their countries, mostly in Europe. And to most of them, the term Stone Age was more diagnostic of date. They did not care about what those stone tools meant with the society. They did not even look at how maybe the interaction of the stone tool makers had with the society. And this continued until maybe the 1950s, 1960s, when early history seems to start changing, and things like maybe botanical studies in terms of looking at the environment, maybe fauna analysis, looking at the interaction of those stone tools and what humans were doing on the landscape started happening. There had never been any efforts for researchers to interact with the society in the field. And therefore, how could this study have been of any use to the local person who had never been invited on the dance floor? And then how could the local people who would have wanted to know what we were doing actually come on the dance floor if they were not invited? So what questions could they even have posed to the researchers who did not even have an interest in addressing issues of the society using those stone tools that they were collecting? I bring out this just to indicate possibly how the history of the study led to the obscured and ignorant interaction with the needs of the society through most of that early practice. But things started to change maybe around 2002, when local communities actually started to demand participation in the science. And while this was actually going on, issues of science and its impact on society was also a very hot topic debate in the world. And therefore, most of the researchers who are in the field then decided to start engaging the society and also the communities where they were working in little ways. And one of the things that they started to do was actually on how they can gain entry into these communities. And I remember what most of the projects then were doing were to give little funding to schools, give little funding to clinics, and then also conduct a little bit of awareness campaigns on the importance of the research. Researchers also started to coin projects more geared towards addressing the needs of the society, but the field of paleoanthropology in Kenya remained, and even up to today, it still remains very obscure towards the public needs. When you look at this field at university level, you will actually realize that it is barely taught in public universities. There are only about 4 universities in Kenya that teach the field of paleoscience, and these are mainly Kenyatta University, Nairobi University, Pwani University, and Maseno University. And there are more than 20 universities in the country. And what they actually teach is a bit of history and a bit of archaeology in the departments of history and archaeology. But more recently, there are 2 universities which have actually started to develop a master's in human evolution. When you also look at the training of the people who have actually been trained in the country, most of them have actually been trained outside of Kenya. Most of them have gone to universities abroad, and when they have come back, they have only worked either in one of the institutions, that's the National Museums of Kenya where I work, or these few universities, the 4 universities that I've mentioned. And therefore, many of these professional trained paleosciences in Kenya have had no quest even to promote this science beyond what they have learned from wherever they have come from. The issue of societal needs has always remained a mirage, far-fetched. You cannot even be able to explain it. Funding within the country also towards this field has also been very limited, and we've also heard that from Tanzania. It's the same case. And it is no brainer that funding influences the path of science by encouraging research on some topics and pointing away from others. Therefore, in the case of paleoscience, research over the years, there has been no direct funding, particularly from African governments. And this has caused a lot of problems because then we cannot be able to link the science with what the society needs. If you look at the government of Kenya today, it has what we call the National Research Fund. And many countries in the world do have that, including South Africa. And this fund is mandated to facilitate research for the advancement of science, technology, and innovation. The fund was founded in 2013, but its funding operations came into full effect around 2017. Although most of its core target concepts that are strategic responses to promotion of multi-institutional and multidisciplinary research, not one paleoanthropological or paleoscience research has ever been funded. The fund has been heavily inclined towards government national agendas. And if you know Africa very well, most of the national agendas are actually politically inclined. This therefore means paleoanthropological or paleosciences research and training in most of the African countries, including Kenya, relies on outside funding, and it is driven by the interest of both the scientists and the donors who seek collaborations with these institutions and researchers. So public needs, societal needs, or questions related to the society, to questions which have impact on society are relegated to the last. But I have to say that all is not lost. There are some paleoanthropological projects in Kenya which have had some societal focus and positive impact. One such project is located within Kubifora to the northeastern of Lake Turkana at the border of Kenya and Ethiopia. And you all know Lake Turkana Basin has a lot of information on paleosciences and paleoanthropology. And the project is developed on archaeological studies, historical, aerial imagery, and remote sensing to provide studies into land use patterns and ecological perspectives through time. It is informed by scientific knowledge by documenting the resiliency of traditional land use systems in semi-arid lands and the changes are facing in an increasingly globalized world. The project aims to integrate ecological and environmental data with data on human activities and habitats spanning around the last 10,000 years, And this is to gain a deep perspective, not only on the current system, but also on its adaptive capacity through time. Issues related to water security are also under study, and the project has actually direct participation of the locals. The second, and this is my favorite project, which has had some societal effect, is historical perspective on maritime cultural heritage. In Kenya, there are so many shipwrecks which have been discovered underwater within the coast of Kenya, the Indian Ocean. And many of these sites have been documented, and they have told us about, they have given us perspectives of trade and early interactions with the outside world. More recently, under a project known as Creating Pathways to Community Resilience and Sustainable Development through the Maritime Cultural Landscape in Kenya, Mr. Sisa Bita, who is the principal investigator, is working towards identifying, documenting, promoting maritime and cultural heritage sites within an area known as Mida Creek. This is an area within the coast of Kenya. And this is in partnership with the women group. And he has engaged the women group in maritime cultural heritage awareness, identification, and also documentation, and also economic use of that maritime resources. You can see here they are going through their awareness and being taught on what maritime cultural heritage is all about and what to do it, how to identify it, how to conserve it. The group has identified several sites within the area and started economic projects around this. Yeah, I see, it's 1 minute. They have constructed boats, traditional boats and canoes, and they actually use these traditional boats and canoes to actually take visitors around those sites. They have also been able to use traditional methods of fishing. So they have been able to come up with traditional fish nets, and they are using this. They have also started organic farming, including beekeeping, butterfly keeping, farming of mangroves, and all this is related to what they have learned in terms of what maritime cultural heritage is all about. So this project has actually been able to bridge science and societal needs. And you can also see that they have constructed a traditional restaurant using traditional materials and traditional technology, and they are offering food to visitors who come to see these maritime sites, which they have been able to identify and develop. And you can see these are just circuits, tourism circuits of what they have been able to do within this area, so that when you come, you are able to be shown even beekeeping, you are able to be shown butterfly farming, you're able to be shown where the maritime cultural sites are. And at the end of the day, you end up at the restaurant where you get your meal. And this is all going towards developing the societies who are taking care of these sites. Therefore, it is clear that with limited focus on paleoscience as a science in Kenya, there are a lot of opportunities that we need to harness. And this study can teach us a lot of lessons about the past and also tell us more about conversations about ourselves, where we came from, how we've been able to develop through time, what the environments we've been through. But it's upon us as scientists to be able to coin our research projects towards needs of the society, so that the society can also be able to see that this science is of benefit to them and that they can be able to use it, and then also engage them in taking care of some of those sites, whether it's paleanthropological or archaeological or paleontological sites. These are some of the things that we need to be doing today, so that the society is with us and also the policymakers are with us to see that we are giving back to the society. And this is should be done through a lot of awareness, creation, advocacy with community, with policymakers, and also just being out there in the media and talking about what our work is all about, how we can be able to bring this science to the communities and to be able to help the society in answering some of the pressing challenges that they are facing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kara. Excellent. So we'll quickly move on to the next presentation. And this one is by His Excellency Mpoki So we will move on to that one. And then after that, we will have the floor open for general question. So Your Excellency, it's your turn.
Oh, well, thank you very much for the warm invitation. Generally to listen to what scientists in the field that I last parted company with long before I went into serious studying of school. And as Guria said, depends on what interest took you to the university. I'm humbled by the presence of individuals that spend time looking at what was and employing that into addressing some of the challenges that we find today. Now, I understand there are people from Tanzania on this call and the different scientists from other nationalities who are into archaeology, doing research, past, and addressing the human culture. I'm told that there are few who have done chemistry and biology here. Well, all of them are welcome. Now, a majority of you, if not all, are aware that Tanzania lost a very, very prestigious individual in the person of President John Pombe Magufuli not too long time ago. And in respect to the contribution that he's done to our country, I'm only asking that we set aside a minute of silence. I know mourning still continues, and in Africa it never ends, but the fact and the attending consequences should give us a reflection. 1 minute, please, just in honor of this fallen African hero. Thank you very much. I was very fascinated by the topic of this 3-day event symposium on the human origins in action, bringing together science, society, and cultures. As a Bible reading and believing Christian, my most obvious reference to the origin of the human race and everything around it is the Holy Bible, and the evidence that surrounds the text in Genesis chapter 1, where Moses specifically said, the servant of the Lord, describing this process as in the beginning God. This I know and believe it with my whole heart. I teach and practice and have no doubt that I shall keep doing. I am certain we believers in the biblical truth also are part of the audience that has been brought together on the symposium. On looking at the program and the topics that all the scholars are meant to present and have been presenting, I have realized that I need to sit down and learn what other people in their sphere know and believe, if there is any such a thing as faith in, now please bear with me, is it paleontology or something that sounds like that? Because Professor Julio Mekada, in the invitation email to this meeting a few months back, intimated me the fact that his work involves international partnership with several institutions bridging human origins research, biological sciences, geology, materials science, and anthropology at the famed World Heritage Site Oltupai Gorge in the country of Tanzania. This is a place where the World Fund Likis did serious work amid large herds of wild animals roaming the savanna plains of Siringet and Ngorongoro Conservation Area, as we refer it today. Truly, Oltupai Gorge is a World Heritage Site, a cradle of mankind, and no other place looks like it in this world. The setting, the location, and I mean, one wonders, how could one just walk into such a place and do what they were able to do then? Yet to this day, others are walking in their footsteps, searching and finding more evidence to what work they did then. Truly, there's a lot that needs to be searched and known, let alone in Tanzania, but also the beauty of the land, fauna and flora contributing to the world. I believe the audience is abreast of this from a personal knowledge, not just a theoretical exposure like we are doing today. I have not visited the actual site where Liki did his work and Mary did their work, but drove by the offices and the makeshift museum, just as I did while trying to locate the Laetoli footprint evidence on the other side towards the south of the Oltupai Gorge. and I got to see the building with lots of pictures, just to be told the actual site was actually covered with soil as a means of preservation. This symposium has rekindled the desire in my person to revisit those historical sites and talk from personal experience and intimate knowledge next time I'm given an opportunity of this kind. Research is key to our individual and societal development. It's through research that we find answers to asked questions, providing evidence for a particular stance or position, a process that adds to the sea of knowledge among thinking alike people for the intent of allowing or causing them to work together. Knowledge truly is like an ocean. The more one rows away from the shore, the more they realize there is so much uncharted territories ahead of them. I'm trying to imagine what would have happened to this world if all that was done and made public by the Likis was taken as everything final that was known. The current excitement pressing our hearts will not have been realized. Just as it is happening with the space of exploration, the input from space scientists around the globe spices the rich into the unknown so much that one country could not have fathomed to do it. And by the way, space science is not a monopoly of some. It's a union of scientific minds that refines the rich so far, so widely. And our eyes every single day can testify to this grand fact. And this is an important leaf that all of us need to borrow from. Collaboration of the kind that I see on the work being showcased in this symposium is built on one great fundamental principle, understanding that one person is a drop, yet many form the ocean. Unity yields strength in all endeavors. The initiative should be lauded and strengthened, not just for what we get to see now, but even for posterity in a sustainable fashion in the world that we live in. The site for research receives international attention. The status accorded to Oldupai Gorge by the UNESCO as a World Heritage Site transcends the borders of the United Republic of Tanzania. It is now a universal property of mankind. The raised status enhances local value addition in terms of care, but also preservation, so it's not ruined by carelessness. And allow me to thank each of you for the contribution and the role that you are playing or have played in preservation and telling the world what is found there, both in the past and in the future. While the spirit of cooperation is no doubt a good one, implementation is never without challenges. I'm certain that the government has always been and will continue to be a willing partner in addressing the challenges, thus those are picked up, and resolving them in a timely manner, as long as they are raised early enough when they surface instead of waiting for complications or chronicity to have carried them afar and brought more problems that could have been solved and bringing about secondary and non-solvable problems. I am sure that none of us who takes part in this work assumes that there's a person seated in some official echelon in Tanzania looking down and picking on the challenges as they surface. Please report them, and in this way together, we shall provide a solution in a timely manner. My office has not received any report resulting from this collaboration, and that is understood, and no offense is picked from this. But I only know of a few individuals that have benefited greatly while pursuing studies under this collaboration. I've just received a few, those who are doing PhDs, and a few that are doing masters. And the last group is what impressed me most. People that are pursuing diploma in tourism management with intent to effect benefit on the local community, the Maasai, from the site where this work is being done. This is the only way that the indigenous people will grow ownership of the facility and jealously guard that site for us, but also for future generations. The illustration that was put forward by Madame Kiura is relevant on what is happening in the east coast of Kenya. While this meeting is on the origins of humans, bringing together society and cultures, I need to remind you that Tanzania, much as it is a 10th of the size of Canada, has room for all this and more. There is no race on humankind that is not home to Tanzania, save for the Eskimos. Of course, you know the Eskimos place would only stay at the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro. Unfortunately, we do not allow people to abode there. But visiting any other places, they are more than welcome. A majority of us live at the base. That said, I am alerting the rest of us that Tanzania is open to all humans at all times of the year for a visit and learning a lot more than just what Oltupai Gorge offers. The Maasai Tribes people inhabit the rolling plains around the conservation area and beyond are the highland and plain Nilotic extraction as the Samburu and the Kalenjins in Kenya. These world famed for their attachment to their traditional values, even when the neighbors are letting go of those essential values that made them unique, given up. This means once one comes to visit, they'll not only see what we're discussing here, but there's also learn science, but pick a leaf or two from how these tribes people have coexisted with the wild nature and the wild animals, especially amicably since time immemorial. They are the custodian of the plains where Oltupai exists. Serengeti National Park is not far off. Depending on the timing of your visit, you may witness the world wonder of Serengeti animal migration, either going to the north or returning to birth a few kilometers from the site of the research. Besides, Serengeti is not the only national park in Tanzania. I am passing by to alert you that there are more than 30 of the kind. A visit to the website of Tanzania Tourism would provide the answer. While this conference will spend time looking at what is, don't forget that as recently as May 7th, New York Times Magazine told us, you can run away from archaeology, but you can't hide. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the privilege that you've granted me to spend with you these 13 minutes in making a presentation on this great subject. And I believe this is just a spice of greater things to come and to enhance the collaboration that has existed among scientists that have their origin in Tanzania and from many other countries that come to learn what we have to offer, but also Tanzanians being exposed in other places far away as Alberta in Canada to acquire knowledge that is going to help us sustain what God has given us in the country. I want to thank you all. God bless.
Oh, wonderful. What a great workshop. First of all, I would like to, all of you, those who are watching from afar and near, to join me in giving a big applause to our wonderful speakers, Dr. Kura Basasuzi and Your Excellency, Dr. Mpuki, who has, despite his busy schedule, has made it to be here with us. So we are not yet at the end, so we will now open the floor for questions and comments, and you can pose your question directly or I think to the chat box, and I have assistants who will read out those questions. Try to be straightforward and clear in your questions and so forth, so that we'll be able to respond to them appropriately. You may direct your question to any of the speakers of the panel at this moment. So Fergus, who's there? Yeah, over to you. See whether there are questions coming up.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gunnar Conciliadol. I'll be doing the question segment. I just wanted to especially thank His Excellency Ulisubisia, Professor Kiora, Professor Bushosi, and Professor Apentic, and an extra special thank for the people currently in Africa staying up until midnight to host these talks with us. The first question, I will post it in the Zoom and I will also read them aloud. This one is to Dr. Apentic. what is the possibilities of archaeological contribution to the tourism industry in Africa? It looks like Africa is only branded as a safari continent.
Very interesting question, but a great question. And from my own experience, you're perfectly right. And that's why I talk of the burden of colonialism. To the extent that Africa is well known for its animals. And as an instructor in African studies or professor in African studies, people tend to be more interested or have more knowledge on animals than the communities who have lived with these animals and the natural environment for centuries. To the extent that some of them are prepared to go and look at this animal passing through villages which are struggling with basic amenities like schools, clinics, and so forth. So yes, that is a reality. Now, tourism can be made valuable and can be used as a vehicle to help develop this community through collaborative activities. If you're an archaeologist and you're working, what do you leave back for the community? How can the community use the knowledge that you have impacted there to help themselves? So one way I have seen, and again, there's a problem here. One way is through what I call collaborative community research. And I mean journey collaboration. I'm not meaning, you get to a project and get few elites from the community to get on board. And then in the end, the benefit stays with only a few elites and you. So when we embrace journey collaboration, what I call journey partnership, where people are made to be part of it, are made to understand that the success and the rewards and the benefit of this research comes back, or they enjoy it, they'll certainly jump on it. So again, I would say, yes, collaboration is another way. What you guys are doing, or this project is doing, is another one example. And I talked about the work of Nick David in the Mandra Mountains, working so hard to make that place become one of the World Heritage Monuments. And Professor Anstar working somewhere in Ghana the same time. I talk of the Kenya project. And these are all projects. And Dr. Kara showed a number of projects, excellent projects, showcasing the role that science, archaeology, anthropology can play in the development industry. In fact, we've gone past where tourism is now, in the past was this idea of the white saviorism, where white people jump into a play, we're going to build clinic for these people, or because we are going to see the animals, and they leave. And that is one of the issues I talk about, the overburden of the colonial experience. So I hope I've not been able to answer, but this is an ongoing process. And that is why I'm saying that in the past, archaeology has been about the past. Now we've seen archaeology moving beyond the past to look at the human conditions, to look at how can policymakers involved in making things better and using that knowledge to help their own society. So I've not, I can't provide the answer, all the answers, but this is the way forward. These are things that we're looking at in the future. Thank you. If anybody, a member wants to add something, we are more than willing to add. Your Excellency, Dr. Kura and Bususi.
Yeah, maybe I can say something about this. And it's the experience actually from Kenya that currently tourism in beaches and tourism in wildlife, just like what Professor is saying, has become, it has not of no interest anymore to most of the tourists, because they have done this over and over again. They are able to go to Tanzania, they are able to go even to other parts of the world where they can have nice beaches and nice, and also look at wildlife. So what we are actually trying to promote right now is to open up more tourism and more tourism products outside of the norm, the beaches and the wildlife. And just as what Professor is saying, communities are being brought on board, but also looking at paleoanthropology and paleosciences, because if you look at the history, and I've already talked about it, the history of how these have been conducted for a very long time. It's researchers go to the field, they dig out wherever they dig out, and they get out. They do not develop those sites. They do not have any connection with the communities. And also, it's also the nature of paleosciences where they are being carried out. Like if you look in Kenya, most of the works are done far away in northern Kenya, which takes almost 2 or 3 days to get there. So even for a tourist to be able to get there, the government also needs to come on board, improve on the communication, improve on the transport, the road networks, and this is already being done. Like there's a lot of network in terms of roads being built, the rail being built, and you'll be able to attract that crop of tourism who are looking for something else other than just the beaches and the wildlife. And they are there. And this is what we call, I think it's called high-end tourism, because these are people who want to experience something different. They'll pay whatever amount of money they want to pay to go into the field, even participate in just some archaeological dig or participate in some paleoanthropological dig, interact with the communities which are there. So this is already starting to be done, but we need more stakeholders to come on board and see and realize that it's not only about going out and digging and getting whatever collections you get and bringing them back. And then in Kenya, there's also what we now call the devolution, or taking away the function of the museum to the people. So it's no longer that one institution which is in charge of museums, but it's regional governments have the mandate to be able now to develop and promote tourism sites within their regions. And these are some of the things that they are looking at, like developing because some of those regions do not have beaches, they do not have wildlife. All they have is archaeological sites. So they have to think outside of the box and develop these sites. So this is already being done. It's starting to pick up, but it's gonna take a while because of what I've said, that most of these sites are in areas which have never been developed.
Excellent.
I would like to compliment on what my two colleagues have just said. Knowledge provides information. Information creates awareness, and that awareness is what drives people to go and find out. Because if after attending this meeting, I've heard something that I didn't know ever existed, there is going to grow a desire in me to go and see with my own eyes. That is why I say next time I am back to Tanzania and Kenya, I will make sure I visit the place where Professor Kiura was talking about. And by the way, I'm going to feast from that traditional restaurant as a way of proving what she said. But also I need to go and see for myself those beds with the rocks that yielded the material that we have. In what setting? Then that is why I was saying Tanzania does not just offer you the Oltupai Gorge. It gives you Ngorongoro on the left or right, depending on how you're looking at it, but also the Serengeti Plain. Depending on the time of the year, we will also not only talk of the plain that are loaded with thousands of animals, but the migration. So all this adds number of days and creates the needs for the people to come. I also said during my presentation that it's beyond this. We have more national parks than just the sites along the Rift Valley where these, you call them paleontology sites are found, where you do all these researches. So that is a contribution. When one comes, the extra baggage of information will open up ways to have them desire to visit those other places. Mount Kilimanjaro does not offer anything in terms of archaeology, but it has everything to offer in terms of the geology, which has given birth to archaeology. So those are the serious contributions that archaeology actually does make into our economies and into the lives of our people because of the interaction which cross-fertilizes what is known from what is not known, accommodating the new and discarding the bad which is old. and keeping the bad that is, the old that is good in our society. That is what I would contribute to that question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another question?
Thank you. Can I contribute something?
Yeah, Dr. Susi.
Yes, thank you all for your good contribution. I want just to add a few notes on that and over, because now I can see it is all globally. Actually, when you take the example in Tanzania, when you go to Tanzania, Zanzibar, there is no safari. Actually, it is historical and archaeological, which is actually bringing the tourism industry in Zanzibar. So now people are changing from wilderness kind of tourism to the cultural tourism. When you go to Odibai, I think since like 3 years ago, when the community museum was established, now Odibai is coming one of the big tourism attraction in Tanzania. I had another project in southern Tanzania where we found like archaeological and rock painting site near Iringa town. And now that site have been brought as a tourism center through the Wetu Farietu like project. And now it's one of the leading destinations in the southern corridor, Tanzania. So what I want to say here, it's not a matter of what has been existing so far. The matter is what should we do to link tourism, archaeological, historical, and other to the tourism package so that the people, visitors can see the wildlife, can see the natural landscape, they can see cultural landscape, archaeology, community engagement, and so by doing that, we will be like broadening our tourism industry, our tourism trading package, and at the end, we have actually, that's where the science, Bioscience, is actually contributing to the community development. So thank you for that.
Great. Another question?
Yes, I just want to mention that we do have a lot of questions and we have a limited amount of time. And well, I thank everybody for their answers. We might have to keep them a little shorter to try to get through as many as we can. The next question is to the ambassador. How can the government bring in money and infrastructure to help local communities who are being exploited by international actors and researchers? What protections can they provide to help these communities?
Oh, thank you so much for that interesting and fitting question. Number one, there's no solution that will answer that question in all countries of the world. So that has to be a custom-made solution. Each government has a way of protecting its citizenry from exploitation. That is the fundamental principle. In Tanzania, for instance, nobody pays to the people that they work with them. All the funds that are payable to the government are collected centrally. And the government department is given according to the budgetary allocation. And you understand, budgets are approved by the parliament, and the parliament is the highest organ that represents the people of the country. There is no way anybody can be engaged with the knowledge of the government below a certain level of remuneration if they are to work for those individuals that come from other countries. That is why individuals that expose themselves under such conditions, suffering, take the responsibility. But if everything is done in a clear, open and transparent manner, no person will suffer, because contracts will be looked at by competent people, approvals will be given, and such engagements will also contribute to the coffers of the country through taxes that will be extracted from payables, such as salaries or allowances. Anything that is done out of the mainstream naturally opens doors to exploitation. Transparency is one message that every person moving to our countries needs to always embody, so that whatever they do, they don't risk themselves abridging the law of the land by not doing what is right.
Good. And just to quickly add to that, I think protection of local communities in Africa is key. I have heard of a sad story, and not quite too long, where a foreigner says, researcher in a university in the north here said, well, I'm not actually interested in Africa. I'm only doing research in Africa because the material I need to work on happen to be in Africa. Those are type of people we should never even allow them to come to Africa even for a visit. Honestly, I'm so angry about that. And there are some researchers who come in just to use Africa and disappear. It has happened. And that is why when this epidemic happened and vaccine, they were talking about trial, Africans, we are very apprehensive. We've always been guinea pigs, and researchers have taken too much advantage of us. Why should you give more money to a European to come and do primatology who has no direct links with local people? He doesn't contribute anything. He carries the material. He alone knows where the material is. When the other one disappears, we don't know. And I think that is something government has to be very strong about. They have to look at the background of researchers who come to Africa to work. Some come to plunder. And that's what I subtly call the colonial gaze. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at, there are wonderful Europeans there, North Americans there, who are working in Africa with their big hats. But the few who are trying to steal and continue to misuse us, we should stand up to those people. Sometimes we tend to love these foreign researchers that are our own researchers. There are people, when they're given the same amount of money, resources in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Ghana, they will do the same amount of work. Mm-hmm. So we have to appreciate our own scientists and see what our own scientists can do. And to end that, I also say that government has to make it a point to ensure that where you have all these resources, local communities living by those areas, you provide good roads to those areas, provide good clinics there, and provide schools for them. Because when you go there and you are sick, where are you going to go? So basically, you must extend some of the basic infrastructural amenities to most of these sites which we want to create tourism or want people to visit. So that is my response to that.
Let me supplement shortly on what Dr. Apentik has just said. If the society or the community around the place that attracts these foreigners to come is ignorant of what is happening, exploitation is rife. But if the society is informed of the property that heritage has to the world and to the country, the contribution that such facilities have to the economy, this is the national economy, the advantages that they accrue from this economy and its management, then people become very vigilant. For instance, when you talk about the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, where Old Pai Gorge is located, people who reside in that conservation area are not allowed to farm. When they don't have food, the government provides through the Ngorongoro Conservation Area Authority that is paying back what is obtained by the people taking care of such sites. So nobody can, you cannot convince them against the government. One time I was talking to some people in Serengeti who told me, go and tell your fellow government leaders that we are the best people to protect the national park against poachers. Because by then the government was putting up a health center, not far from the Laetoli site where we have those footprints. So those are some of the things that governments are endeavoring in doing so that citizens realize that what money is obtained through these activities actually flows back to them. Not individually, but as a community, as a society. It's happening in Tanzania. I believe it's happening in Kenya. I believe it's happening in other countries around the world where such activities take place.
Thank you. Fergus, we'll move on. Maybe last question.
All right. Yeah, it looks like we're running a little bit out of time. So this might be the last question. This one is for Dr. Bushosi. the fact that archaeology as a discipline started at the University of Dar es Salaam in the 1980s, what are the plans to expand this in other Tanzanian universities?
Basuzi, you're muted. I'm sure she's not sending me a message. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm just talking about the establishment. We have been doing a lot, not just in Tanzania alone, but in East Africa in large. So we are in Tanzania now at this point, we have actually established the program at the University of Dodoma, where now they have archaeology and anthropology at the undergraduate level. We have at the University of Iringa, where it's taught and archaeology and heritage management, and actually it's taught in a number of and part of history training in most of the Tanzanian universities. But again, we have managed to train like scholars from all of East Africa, and now we have that archaeology in the history at the University of Makerere and Kiambogo in Uganda, as well as in Kenya. Actually, most of those people were trained in Tanzania. So because Tanzania now archaeology, because it is a department with the teaching from undergraduate to PhD level. So we have done a lot of our part to bring archaeology in East Africa and the SADC countries. But as I have said in my presentation, the big challenge is like when we come to the issue of infrastructure, like modern, and this is not just on Bioscience, it's actually in most of the science discipline in African universities. So we have those challenges of infrastructure, but we are trying enough to play our part so that, and our main goal is just to make sure that actually Africans, they're doing their science. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are preparing Africans to do science in the future rather than relying on scientists from other part of the world to come in Africa to do science for the Africans. Africans, they have to do science for Africans, so that, and that's the only way we can bring the issue of local community involvement, the local community participation, and the issue of archaeology and public development in its place. Thank you.
Any other last comment before I start with my concluding remarks? Anybody has?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe just to add on to what Dr. Busoshi has indicated in terms of developing the field of paleosciences in Africa in general, we also have to look beyond just coming up with new training institutions for the subject,
Right.
but also look at opening up opportunities for those who are trained to be able to practice whatever they are trained in. And this can only be done if we are able to expand the field of paleosciences to be able to include other fields which are more often, or which more often have opportunities in job opportunities, in career opportunities, in practicing opportunities. Because as I indicated before, in paleosciences in East Africa, once you train in paleosciences, you either go to the museums or go to the few universities that teach. But if we look at this field in a more diverse way, whereby you can be able to practice geology, and practice maybe even dating, and also give the infrastructure and the equipment for those kinds of practices in terms of if it's dating, you don't have to take your samples abroad, you can do it in Africa. Then we are creating more opportunities for those who train in those fields to be able to practice and also to be able to earn a living. We all go to school to earn a living. It's not just to practice whatever we do. So if those who are trained do not feel that they can be able to be absorbed in the society and make a living out of it, then however many universities we create, however many departments we create in the field, we will still not get the students. So let us open up and create opportunities and create diverse practices within paleosciences, so that I'm not only doing archaeology, I can do archaeology, but link it to something else and make a living out of it. Thank you.
Okay, good, great. So we've come to the end of our session. And first of all, I would like again to say thank you to our wonderful speakers, His Excellency, Dr. Mpuki, Dr. Kera, and Dr. Busuzi. This part of the workshop was very unique in a way. And from my experience, it was very interesting to me that a session was basically devoted to how do we make anthropology in all its other fields relevant to African development. And this is something that people have been talking in the corridors for a long time, but there's not been this direct conference where we are talking about archaeology and development. I remember when I was taking archaeology at the university in Ghana, you were even shy to tell people that you were taking archaeology because people didn't know what archaeology is. People think that it's digging. What are you going to do with archaeology? So basically you start a program without knowing that, well, it has no relevance. So people say, who is going to employ archaeology? Apart from the museum, where are you going to work? Now, when we begin to link archaeology to broader societal issues, archaeology is about detecting things and trying to figure things out. You could become a good detector. If you are able to work with artifacts and find out what they were, you can work. And in the Ghana police forces, the military, they have paleoscientists, they have forensic scientists and so forth. So anthropology has come of age. It is trying to shake itself of the colonial yoke, where the idea was just to understand people's culture, to have control over them. And I think this workshop was really great. A lot of interesting perspective coming from His Excellency, who's in the policy, but who's a scientist, and coming from people who are working in the field. So from what I can sum up with the facts from this presentation is that we all talked about exploitation, gender collaboration. And in fact, Dr. Busuzi threw a challenge to us about some of the major challenges to paleosciences in Africa. He talked about lack of mentorship, financial support, people, no labs and so forth and all that. And, conducive support for people, younger people. And in fact, paleoscience is not considered a priority when it comes to African development, even from a budgetary perspective. When governments are making budgets and so forth, paleoscience is at the bottom. It's not a priority. And it's high time we begin to make that. And Busuzi's presentation dovetailed into Kera's own of talking about lack of funding directly for paleosciences. And though a lot of excellent initiatives, they are not usually supported, and even at the institutional levels, the various institutions not developed and so forth. So these are also linked, and His Excellency brought this together by talking about, this not just about archaeology, but all the trappings that come with it. So we can conclude by saying that certainly paleoscience or anthropological science, whether we're talking about archaeology we're talking about primatology, we're talking about linguistics. They all have a major role to play in African development. And that it is high time African government begin to take these areas seriously. Many countries now are beginning to rely on tourism. How can we make it sustainable? Archaeological, anthropological knowledge is very important. And even not in Africa, but at a broader level, worldwide level, anthropology is beginning to play a major role in shaping up the continent. So I will conclude by saying that an excellent workshop, and I wish we had all the time to ourselves and we had more discussions on some of these issues. There's a lot to say. So on behalf of the conference organizers, my good friend Julio's Dr. Macadis and his team of hardworking assistants, and I would like to thank His Excellency for making time to be with us. I would like to thank Dr. Kera. I know it's not easy to stay up awake and even get access to internet. It can be a problem. That's what we're talking about, infrastructure. So, you know, one way of getting these things is through infrastructure, getting more funding to young scholars and so forth to do this work. So thank you so much for joining us. And I would love to have you present in some of my African studies and development studies class. I also want to thank Dr. Buzi for sharing. In fact, the statistics he provided were alarming. I knew that it existed, but I didn't know that it was so wide in certain areas where you have only 10% senior members of the university. And when they go, that there are no some programs, not in Tanzania, in other universities, which died out because they never trained anybody to take over. So a professor goes on retirement and you know, there's nobody to take over. So we should begin to invest on our human capital. We should begin to put money into training of our own people. It's not necessarily, we have the facilities to train them even at home. We're talking about, Busuzi mentioned, you know, brain drain, where people come and train and they never go back because of working condition. So one way is to improve the university conditions. It's not a matter of getting people there, but how to retain them. The frustrations in African universities can sometimes be a challenge. And I know that I've gone to do sabbaticals in a number of African countries, in Ghana before, and I've seen the frustration that is brought to bear on colleagues. So governments across Africa need to invest in the educational systems. They need to invest on their human beings. And if we don't do that, we are going to get into trouble. We have seen presidents who have been president for 20, 30 years, and they are sick, and there's no hospital in their country. They have to be flown abroad. Poetic justice. Unfortunately, we don't celebrate death. But Nyadema died in the plane on his way to France for treatment because there was no hospital in Togo. And he has been there for over 40 years. So we need to put resources into our human beings. I need to bring up, why should an archaeologist take samples from Kenya or Tanzania to America to analyze in the lab? Why can't we have that lab? When COVID started, they now have labs everywhere they can test people. Why? Africa can develop, we have the skills and we are capable. So it's a question of, again, appealing to His Excellency, who is near to the center of power. We need to put more resources into training our local scientists, and we cannot move anywhere without scientists. If you listen to the work of Kwame Nkrumah, listen to the speeches of Kwame Nkrumah, it was all about science, it was all about energy, it was all about human development. And Nyerere echoed the same thing. The elder leader, they had the wisdom. And recently, your own beloved president, he went out. There are a lot of good things happening in Africa. Recently, I was reading about the president of Malawi, and I was impressed. I said, yes, that's my continent. Leaders are emerging. It's not going to be like that. So we want the fire on. So once again, on behalf of Julio and the conference organizing committee, University of Calgary, thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to a long working relations with all of you. Thank you once again. Thank you.